Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Today we're doing a deep dive into the strategic landscape of the modern workplace. We're using the SmartKeys article, Employee Engagement Trends 2026, as our guide. And we're not talking about, feel-good initiatives here. This is a serious business problem. The article paints a picture that is, frankly, a massive leak in global business efficiency. Only 31% of staff feel fully involved in their work, and, what's more worrying, 17% are actively disengaged. They are basically a net loss to your organization.
And this is so much more than a morale issue. It's a financial emergency. The cumulative result of that participation gap is just staggering. Gallup estimates the lost global productivity from this is around, what, $438 billion a year?
$438 billion, wow.
Yeah, and if you break that down, it's roughly $2,246 wasted for every single actively disengaged person every year. That number should immediately shift engagement from like a soft HR metric to a critical item on the CEO's agenda.
That's not a rounding error. That is a serious, serious drain on the global P&L. So our mission today is to cut through the usual noise and give you a clear map of some high-impact practical moves. We need those leverage points, the actions in recognition, communication, leadership clarity, things that really improve retention and performance fast. Okay. Let's unpack this and find those quick wins.
So the foundational idea the article really drives home is that engagement is a direct financial outcome. It all comes back to organizational clarity. And the upside of getting this right is just immense clarity. It functions like this massive performance multiplier. When people actually understand the goals, not just the mission statement, but their role in it, you see these dramatic lifts. Like 63% report higher productivity.
63%, just from clarity.
Exactly. And 59% have more motivation, 54% express greater satisfaction.
So just by removing the fog around why are we even doing this, you're talking about a direct return.
Absolutely. The data shows clarity reduces friction everywhere. Beyond just productivity, they found 45% better collaboration and 44% stronger problem solving.
And these are complex lifts, all coming from the simple act of, intentional communication. But if we dig into the demographics, who's struggling the most? There seems to be a real warning signal coming from the under 75s, Gen Z. They're showing the biggest decline. Why are they the canary in the coal mine here?
It suggests that traditional management is failing the newest wave of professionals. Gen Z reports 3 critical shortfalls. They get less consistent recognition. Their role expectations feel fuzzy, constantly shifting.
And they don't have the tools they need.
Right. Weak access to the necessary digital tools and resources to perform at their best. If you don't address those gaps, you're signaling you aren't ready for the future of work.
And you risk falling way behind in the talent market. That's fascinating. It's not just about what they want, it's a failure of enablement. So the practical insight for anyone listening, especially team leaders, is maybe to start running short pulse surveys, things that specifically probe goal clarity and recognition frequency, and crucially, track those improvements by age band.
Exactly. That gives them visible, quantitative proof that you're actually listening. And while people still value things like strong team bonds, the top drivers today are more about structural confidence. It comes down to 2 things people need. Confidence in leadership and being able to say, I know what I need to be successful.
That shift from, happy hours to concrete enablement, that feels key, which is a perfect segue into our 3 core drivers and the practical levers we can pull. So, driver 1, leadership confidence. We know perceptions of leaders have sharply declined since 2020. That trust deficit is now the top driver of disengagement. So, how do you tactically fix that?
You fix it with rigorous consistency and radical transparency. This means regular updates, yes, but critically it means explaining the decisions, the why, and the trade-offs, not just the announcement itself. Leadership has to show visible follow-through. It signals reliability.
And when the executive team is predictable, that reduces the uncertainty that fuels all that anxiety.
Precisely. Now, the second core driver is clarity of goals. This is where most companies really stumble. It's just not enough to have a mission statement on a wall. You have to align team and individual outcomes directly to company priorities.
So every single employee needs to be able to answer, what does good look like for me today in my role?
That's the question.
And that requires a key operational shift, the article stresses, moving from tracking outputs to managing real outcomes. When an executive sees that $2,246 cost per person, the first instinct is to track tasks more closely, but that just breeds micromanagement.
It does. And you justify this cultural shift by showing the difference between activity and impact. So instead of tracking, I completed 5 reports, you track the outcome. We reduced compliance errors by 10% because those reports were accurate.
Right. Right. It's about making values actionable, linking recognition to behaviors that support the culture, not just busy work. Which brings us to driver 3, strategic recognition. And this really is a low-hanging fruit opportunity. I mean, the data is compelling and a bit worrying. Half of people say they are doing the absolute minimum, yet 22% say they would try harder with just a little more recognition.
And despite that, only 1 in 3 received any praise in the last 7 days. It's a huge miss. Unrecognized staff are twice as likely to leave. Recognition has to move way beyond the annual review or that generic "good job this quarter" email. That's just noise. We need a framework that is frequent, specific, and multi-source. So praise from managers, sure, but also from peers and senior leaders.
To make it feel genuine.
Yes. And the detail is everything. When you give praise, you have to note the impact, not just the activity. So instead of "thanks for finishing that analysis," it's "your clear analysis saved the team 3 hours of debate and helped us land the decision faster."
And you can bake that in. A simple ritual like 5 minutes of wins of the week in a team meeting can exponentially increase that frequency. Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's get into the future workplace toolkit. And the biggest area of friction right now, hybrid work. RTO, or return to office, is so often framed as a real estate issue, but the data here shows it's a critical engagement lever. It seems the sweet spot is 2 to 3 days in the office. That rhythm actually links to higher engagement and better outcomes.
That 2-3 day window seems to be the balance point. You get focused deep work at home and you get in-person collaboration and connection. It optimizes for both. But, and this is a but leaders have to be really wary of heavy-handed mandates. The article warns that 37% of staff say they will look for another job if in-office rules get too strict.
So it's a huge retention risk.
It's a measurable risk.
So the key action is trust, backed by purpose. Leaders have to communicate the how and the why of RTO. You need intentional rituals for those on-site days, strategic planning, retrospectives, recognition events, not just forcing people to do desk work they could do better at home.
That need for transparency, it's the core currency of the modern workforce. And we see the exact same thing with technology, especially AI. AI allows for personalization at scale, which is great, but it cannot come at the cost of human trust.
Right. It can tailor communications, deploy assistance to surface resources faster, but it has to be seen as enablement, not surveillance.
Exactly. The uses are powerful. Sentiment monitoring can flag hotspots before they become big conflicts. But there is a trust barrier. 41% of leaders expect challenges with safe adoption.
So the solution is transparency?
Absolute transparency, strong guardrails, and human oversight. That's how you prevent the feeling of surveillance and protect trust.
Now, this next connection is critical, linking culture, talent, and the manager. The findings are clear. Culture is not a soft benefit. It's a competitive advantage.
It always comes back to performance. When we talk about well-being or DEI, we are really talking about innovation and performance. Companies in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity are about 35% more likely to beat median financial returns.
And on the flip side, the top complaints are always pay, stress, and workload. A quarter of employees feel overstressed. You can't sustain performance like that.
You just can't. So the actionable step is focusing on sustainability. Rebalance workloads, normalize talks about burnout, and equip managers to spot overload before someone quits.
It's a proactive well-being strategy, and we have to talk about the upskilling imperative. The pace of change is just relentless. 74% of workers want new skills, and the World Economic Forum says 44% of core skills will change in the next 5 years.
Which means the old model of sending people off for a week-long training session is it's dead. Training has to be tied immediately to real projects. We need coaching, on-demand resources, short learning sprints that people can apply right away.
It future-proofs the employee and the company at the same time. Okay, now let's focus on the manager. The article calls them the linchpin. And, well, here's where it gets really interesting. They're the ones who translate strategy into daily work. But only about 31% of managers are engaged themselves. The manager is like the router in your network. If the router is confused or burnt out, the whole team's connection is lost.
That is the perfect analogy. And they need to be enabled and coached and not just given more admin burden. They need clear playbooks that tell them how to manage for outcomes, not just tasks. If the manager is running blind, the team is already lost.
So true.
And finally, the power of voice and ambassadors. It's crucial to use frequent surveys, but the real magic is closing the loop publicly. You have to share the results, name the owners of the action items, and give clear timelines. That builds incredible trust.
And when you empower your staff to speak for the company, that trust pays off exponentially. Messages shared by staff get 561% more engagement than from the corporate brand. They're your most credible channel. So, what does this all mean? We've covered a lot of ground. I think the synthesis here is to turn this into a short roadmap you can test immediately. The article seems to point toward 3 high-impact pilots for this quarter.
I'd say focus on those core structural drivers. First, rebuild trust with clear, consistent leadership updates. Explain the why. Second, make recognition frequent, specific, and multi-source.
Right. And third,
And third, fundamentally shift from managing tasks to tying all daily work back to measurable business outcomes. Small experiments in these 3 areas. That's what creates lasting success. When voice, learning, and enabled managers all align, career mobility stops being just a benefit. It becomes a real, reliable business advantage that locks in your top talent.
that's the long-term vision. But for a final provocative thought for you right now, try this. Take the 2 core drivers we talked about, recognition frequency and goal clarity scores, and track them directly against your voluntary turnover rate by team for the next 2 quarters. That will test the article's core idea in your own context, and it will show you exactly where to put your resources for the highest return. We want to explicitly thank you for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast today. If you want to dive deeper into these findings, see the full data on recognition frameworks, AI adoption, all the specifics of that hybrid work sweet spot, we really encourage you to read the full detailed article. You can find the link to the original SmartKeys article we discussed today right there in the show notes. Please subscribe to the podcast for more deep dives into the future of work and strategic business insights. We'll see you next time.